The job doesn't look like much from the outside. I hook fuel lines. I check pressures. I log the draw rates on a panel that nobody else reads, sign the daily manifest, and unhook the lines again. 14 years I've done it at Carath Deep Station, same dock, same port array, same 3-kilometer ring of the Velhari habitat hanging 40 meters off my starboard shoulder whenever I step out onto the gantry. My supervisor, when I first arrived, told me the work was simple enough that a station drone could do it. He wasn't wrong. The drones broke down. I didn't. My daughter was 4 when I took the post. She's 18 now, working a cargo manifest 2 docks over. I see her most mornings in the commissary. She drinks the same terrible pressed grain coffee I do, and we don't talk much because there isn't much to say before a shift. We just sit. That's enough. I tell you all of this because nobody who came after me, the admirals, the engineering teams, the senior fleet technicians with their certification bars and their scanning arrays, nobody bothered to ask how long I'd been standing on that dock. They saw the coveralls. They saw the fuel line socket on my belt. They saw the manifest board in my hand, and they looked straight through me the way people look through furniture. Which is fine. I've had 14 years to get used to it. The wobble started 11 months before the end. Not a dramatic thing, nothing that would show on the station's main diagnostic board, not at first. But when you've been hooking a fuel line to the port attitude thruster array for 14 years, you feel the deck under your boots, and you watch the pressure readings the way a person watches the face of someone they've known a long time. Something was off. The port array was pulling a half-second lag on its correction cycles. Every time the station's automated system fired a compensating burst on the starboard side, the port array answered just a little late. Not enough to register as a fault, not enough to throw an alarm, but enough that my gauge needle had a tremor in it I hadn't seen before. I logged it. I noted it in the daily manifest 3 times over the first 2 months in plain language in the field marked anomalous pressure events. I wrote it clearly, port array correction lag half-second interval consistent on draw cycles above 60%. I don't know if anyone read it. Nobody asked me about it. Nobody came down to the dock to ask the fuel line hand what she'd noticed. That's not how it works. The manifest goes into the system. The system routes it to maintenance review. Maintenance review is a queue that 11 engineering teams later, I'm told, had 462 open items in it, the morning everything finally came to a head. The first engineering team arrived in the 3rd month. Velhari fleet engineers, 6 of them with portable scanning arrays and a direct link to the station's main processor core. They spent 4 days on the problem. They updated the attitude control firmware, recalibrated the compensator thresholds, and filed a report that said the station was operating within normal parameters. They left. The wobble continued. My gauge needle still trembled. The 2nd team arrived 5 weeks later, then a 3rd. By the 7th team I had stopped counting. I would see them come down the main corridor with their equipment cases, settle into the engineering bay 2 levels up, and I would think, they'll look at the software again. They always looked at the software. The attitude control logs, the compensator timing records, the automated correction sequences. It was all in the processor, all available, all clean. The software said the station was fine. The software was not wrong. It just wasn't reading what I was reading. By the 11th month, the lag had grown. The port array's correction cycles were running nearly 2 full seconds behind, and now the automated system was fighting itself, firing stronger compensating bursts on the starboard side to cover for what it thought the port was about to do, and the port was responding to those bursts instead of the original attitude drift. They were chasing each other. The station was beginning to process, a slow, grinding rotation that the system kept trying to correct and kept making worse. Admiral Carath Vel arrived with the 11th engineering team on a Tuesday. I know it was Tuesday because the Velhari transit freighter docks on Tuesdays, and I had 3 lines running at once when his shuttle came in on the adjacent platform. He was tall, even for a Velhari, pale blue-gray skin, close-cropped white hair, The kind of expression a person gets from 40 years of people doing exactly what they're told the moment he looks at them. He walked through my dock without glancing at me. I was furniture. That afternoon, the 11th team ran their diagnostics. I watched them from the gantry while I logged my draw rates. 4 hours, then 6. I could hear, faintly through the hull plating, the sound of the port array cycling, that slight grinding tone it had developed, the one that meant the pressure accumulator behind valve 7 hadn't fully equalized between correction bursts. At one point, one of the junior technicians walked past the dock entrance, and I thought about saying something. I even opened my mouth, then I closed it again. Nobody wants to hear it from the fuel line hand. I've learned that. You say something, they thank you politely, and they go back to looking at the software. So I stood on my gantry and I watched the station wobble and I let the professionals work. That was the thing they were missing. I had figured it out in the 9th month, sitting with my coffee and my manifest and nothing but time to think about a trembling gauge needle. The automated system was firing the port array's correction bursts without giving the pressure accumulator behind valve 7 time to equalize. The accumulator had a slow bleed, not a fault, just wear, 14 years of thermal cycling, and when the system fired corrections faster than the accumulator could equalize, a back pressure built up in the line. The software read the thruster as ready. The metal knew it wasn't. The system had been fighting a closed fist for 11 months. I finished my shift. I filed my manifest. I went home, heated a tin of grain soup, and called my daughter to make sure she'd eaten. She had. We talked for 11 minutes about nothing important. I went asleep. In the morning, I came back to the dock. The 11th team was still in the engineering bay. I picked up my hand spanner from the tool bracket beside the port array access panel. The same spanner I've carried for 8 years, a plain steel thing with worn grip tape, and I walked to valve 7. I opened the manual bleed. There's a T-handle on the outer face of the accumulator housing, behind the main line coupling. It's there for maintenance purges. Marked in Velhari script that translates roughly to equalization bypass. Nobody had touched it since my predecessor, whoever that was. I gave it a quarter-turn counterclockwise, held it for 12 seconds while the trapped back pressure bled out through the bypass port, then returned it to seated. The grinding tone stopped. The attitude thrusters ran their next correction cycle in clean sequence, port and starboard together, no lag. I stood there with my hand spanner and listened to the station systems settle the way a room settles when a conversation finally ends on the right note. Then I put the spanner back on my belt and went to check on line 3. Admiral Vel found me 20 minutes later. He stood at the entrance to the dock bay and looked at me for a long moment, and I could tell from the look that someone had explained to him what had happened. He was not a man who showed much on his face, but there was something there. A recalibration, the way a person's expression changes when the map they've been reading turns out to be the wrong scale. "You are the dock attendant," he said. It wasn't quite a question. "Fuel line hand," I said. 14 years. He was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that's doing work. "I would like to offer you a position," he said, "on the Fleet Engineering Review Board, full credentials, your own station." I thought about that for the length of time it took me to finish logging line 3's draw rate. "No thank you, Admiral," I said. He waited. They always wait, as if a different answer is still coming. "I have a daughter 2 docks over," I said. "We have coffee together most mornings. The work here suits me." I capped my stylus and tucked the manifest under my arm. "The valve will need a proper seal replacement inside 60 days. Velhari thermal grade compound, spec 12 or better. I put it in the maintenance log." He looked at me the way I sometimes look at the pressure gauge, like he was revising his understanding of what the reading meant. "Thank you," he said. "Don't mention it," I said, and I went to hook the next fuel line.